Are you feeling older in 2020? I feel like I've aged 5 years in the past 7 months. You know you're growing old when your mind makes contracts your body can't fulfill. You know all the answers, but no one is asking the questions. You look forward to a dull evening. You sit in a rocking chair, but you can't get it going. Your knees buckle, but your belt won't. Your back goes out more than you do. You quit trying to hold your stomach in no matter who walks into the room. Your arms are too short for you to read the newspaper. People call at 9 p.m. and ask, "Did I wake you?" You dream about prunes. Your best friend is dating someone half his age and isn't breaking the law. We may not want to face the fact that we are aging. A friend of mine turned 50. His mother called to say happy birthday. He asked her, "How does it feel to be the mother of a 50-year-old? She said, "Shut up." 3 sweet ladies were sitting in a diner. They were elderly. They were chatting about various things. One lady said, "I'm really getting forgetful. This morning I was at the top of the stairs and couldn't remember if I had just come up or if I was getting ready to go down." The second one said, "Well, that's nothing. This morning I was sitting on the edge of the bed and couldn't remember if I had just awakened or whether I was going to bed." The third lady smiled smugly. "Well, my memory's just as good as it's always been, knock on wood." Then she looked startled. "Who's there?" In another translation of Psalm 90, it begins, "Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God." God is our dwelling place. It may seem odd to picture God as a place. What does it mean that God has been our dwelling place? It means that God has been and is our home. In the Bible, God being our home is a powerful and positive metaphor for God. I'm aware for some people, home is not a safe place. There is a rise in domestic violence, spouse abuse, and child abuse during the pandemic. I was talking with a recently retired teacher, and she was very worried about some of the children who had been in her kindergarten class over the last couple of years. They were not in good home situations then, and she was worried about them now during the pandemic. Not everyone's experience of home is positive. We need to do all we can to protect those who are at risk of abuse. The idea that God is our home carries a great deal of comfort and serenity with it. We can be at peace now, and we can be at peace with God in eternity. We are at home with God. God is our refuge, our fortress, the one who surrounds us and protects us. God is eternal and is always there for us. In this world, it is so easy to be displaced, to lose our homes. History is filled with people displaced by war. In 722 BC, the Assyrians conquered the Israelites. They took them captive and marched them from their homes into a foreign land. Later, in 587 BC, the people of Judah were taken captive after they were conquered by the Babylonians, and they were made to serve as slaves in that country. I think of the Native Americans in the Trail of Tears, and Africans captured and loaded onto slave ships and brought to the Americas. The loss of home is devastating. Last month, there were more than 12,000 refugees who had been forced from their homes in their native countries and were in a refugee camp on the island of Lesbos, Greece. The camp was designed for about 2,500 people. There were more than 12,000 living there. Then they saw their tents in the refugee camp go up in flames by fires which apparently were intentionally set. Such trauma for those refugees. Many have lost their homes in natural disasters. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and fires have damaged or destroyed homes. I spoke recently to a woman whose home was destroyed in the Bahamas by the Category 5 Hurricane Dorian. Her family survived, but there is no home to go back to. The United Methodist Church and other organizations do a great deal to help those who have been displaced, either to go back to their homes or to find new homes. When I visited our sister church in Cuba, in Madama, Cuba, their wooden home had been left uninhabitable by a hurricane. But the United Methodist Committee on Relief built a small home made of concrete, much more stable home for the parents and their 3 children. Our church is helping to complete 2 more rooms so that all of them don't have to sleep in the same bedroom. I can only imagine the sense of loss and devastation people feel when they lose their homes. Because of the pandemic, many have lost their jobs and are at risk to lose their homes. We're helping the ones that we can. In a spiritual sense, too, people are experiencing a kind of homelessness, a sense of loss. They're groping in the darkness for something to hold on to. All the progress that we made in reducing opioid dependency in recent years seems to have vanished. More people are turning to drugs and alcohol. I can understand that. It's a difficult time. But there is hope. The psalmist points to God as our home, a place of refuge in difficult times. God is a home that we will never lose, a home in which we are always welcome. God's hospitality is ever present as the Holy Spirit is always with us. God's love is warm and inviting. Psalm 90 is ascribed to Moses. It's the only psalm that is ascribed to him. Moses had experienced God's hospitality when God was revealed to him in the burning bush, and when Moses and the elders ate and drank in God's presence on Mount Sinai. Moses had experienced human hospitality when Pharaoh's daughter plucked him as a baby from the Nile River. She saved him from the crocodiles, the hippos, and from her father's edict to kill all the baby Hebrew boys. When Moses fled from Egypt, Jethro invited Moses to dinner. Why? Because Moses had helped Jethro's daughters water his flocks at the well. Jethro welcomed him. He told Moses, Mikases Sukasa, or in Hebrew, Bati Batcha. Make yourself at home, Moses. And he did. And Moses stayed for 40 years. Be careful who you invite to stay in your home. But God is not careful. God opens the door to all who will come. With God, there are no restrictions. God is our home now and forever. God has adopted us, and God is our forever home. The psalmist reminds us that we humans are mortal. He says, we are swept away like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. But come evening, it withers, all dried up. Yes, we are wasting away. Yes, all our days slip away. We finish up our years with a whimper. We live at best to be 70 years old, maybe 80 if we're strong, but their duration brings hard work and trouble because they go by so quickly, and then we fly off. God is our eternal home. Some may have gotten a glimpse of God's eternal home. What do I mean? People have told me about their near-death experiences, have always said they were not afraid. They had a sense of peace, like they were going home. They often see a bright light. Some of them said they saw a family member there waiting to greet them. Jesus told his disciples that he was going to die, but that would not be the end. And one day he would return to take them to the place where he had prepared for them. He said, don't be troubled, trust in God, trust also in me. When I go to prepare a place for you, I will return and take you to be with me so that where I am, there you may be also. Lots of people speculate about what heaven will be like. A taxi driver and a minister were standing in line to get into heaven. The taxi driver approached the gate, and St. Peter said, "Welcome. I understand you were a taxi driver. Since I'm in charge of housing, I believe I have found the perfect place for you. See that mansion over the hilltop? It's yours." The minister heard all this and began to stand a little taller. He said to himself, "If a taxi driver got a place like that, just think what I'll get." The pastor approached the gate, and St. Peter said, "Welcome. I understand you are a minister. See that shack in the valley?" St. Peter had hardly gotten the words out of his mouth when the irate minister said, "I was a pastor. I preached the gospel. I helped teach people about God. Why does that taxi driver get a mansion and I get a shack?" St. Peter responded, "Well, it seems when you preached, you put people to sleep. When the taxi driver drove, he put people to praying. By the way, I'm just hoping for a tent." We can learn to be at rest in God's peace, even in the back of a taxi. God is our home. St. Augustine wrote in his Confessions, "Lord, you have made us for yourself. Our heart is restless until it finds its rest in you." For people of faith, our home is always with God. God has promised never to leave us. Have you ever been around someone who made you feel at home? They were loving and kind, accepting and welcoming, warm and hospitable. You felt at ease in their presence. God is like that now and forever. As the church, we are called to be like the Lord. God is not a building, but God is our home. The church is not a building. The church is the people. Our mission is to be a home for others. We need to be a home for all those displaced persons who do not feel that they've ever been loved or accepted. I understand this metaphor that God is our dwelling place to be like us coming home to family, or like visiting a trusted friend who is glad to see us. God not only provides for us a place, God takes time to listen to us. God welcomes us into God's loving embrace whenever we come to the Lord. Today we begin in-person worship for those for whom it is safe to return. It will be like coming home for them. However, the truth is the church never closed. The building closed, but the church has continued. You are the church. You are the people of God reaching out in love and hospitality to those you can. You have helped more people during the pandemic because of your generosity than in previous years. You have continued to support the missions of our church. You have continued to be in touch with others and show your love for other people. You continue to love people where you are. This church has been a spiritual home for people since October 1891. Again, I'm not talking about the building, but about the people. This church went through the pandemic of 1918, when only 2,500 people lived in Sarasota. Several became ill with Spanish flu, and some of them died. The church was there for each other and for others in the community when they suffered and when they grieved the loss of loved ones. We continued to be a home for others, not in the physical sense, but in terms of welcoming them, being someone they can feel free to talk to, a safe place for them to share, someone to help, a trusted friend. God being our home means God is our closest friend, our safe place where we can be ourselves without fear of condemnation. May those who are depressed and those who feel unloved or lonely feel at ease with us. May they sense our love for them. May we, the church, be friends to those who are in need of a friend today and as long as we live, until we go home to be with God, our eternal friend. Our psalm reminds us that our time is limited on this earth. The psalmist prays to God, "So teach us to count our days that we may gain a wise heart." Wisdom teaches us that God is always there for us. God is eternal, but our time is short. Let's use the time we have to let others know of God's amazing love and grace. The Lord invites all of us to live in God's presence now and forever. Welcome home.